bookies, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest, the author of the upcoming novel, The Blizzard's Secrets. No other than Miss DJan. Yes, welcome to Book 101. And can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I am DJan. I write both children's books as well as young adult books. So I'm an author of both, and I absolutely love creating stories that are engaging and exciting with lots of plot twists and roller coaster rides and very thrilling experiences, but also at the same time, I love incorporating meaningful themes and concepts that are inspirational and encouraging and motivational inside of my books as well.
What age did you realize that you're good in writing?
Well, really, it started off when I was in middle school. I was very, very young. I didn't at that time necessarily think that I was a writer per se, but that was kind of when I started, my interest started being piqued a little bit because, like everybody, you have assignments that you fulfill in school, particularly in English class where you have to write things, whether they're essays or poems and whatnot. And when writing poetry, or even different kinds of journal entry kind of assignments, I came to realize that it came very natural to me. When they were journal entry kinds of assignments, a number of times I ended up writing some sort of stories because that just seemed like something that would be kind of interesting. And while others had a little bit of difficulty with it sometimes, to me it always came just very naturally, it was always pretty much second nature to me. And I kept getting compliments for the things that I was creating. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then later down the road, fast forward some time, I started putting together stories for my mom, and it would usually be for different kinds of special occasions, like whether it was a birthday or Mother's Day or just different things like that. And I would typically write them so that they were relatable and very meaningful for her. Because, I wrote them specifically for her and made them so that they were very special for her. And she would tell me how much she liked them and enjoyed them. And I started to realize, well, this is kind of interesting because it's still pretty easy for me, and I'm actually enjoying this. And then fast forward a little bit further, and I started kind of, just exploring writing some stories on my own. I came across some skits and then decided to kind of extend the content of the skits in like my own little stories, or, just different kinds of things where I was exploring things a little bit. And I came to kind of realize, well, these stories seem to kind of all fit together really nicely. And it kind of like books that I would read, like actual books that were actually published that I would read and that came from actual authors. And I'm like, well, maybe actually some other people out there might enjoy these books that I'm writing. And maybe they would even benefit from the meaningful themes and concepts that are behind them and the meaningful symbolism behind them. Maybe other people would be able to enjoy them and benefit from them. So that's when I started to kind of actually consider publishing some of my works. And then fast forward a little bit further, and then here we are today.
Oh, interesting indeed. Who are the authors that influence you the most?
I mentioned that I really absolutely love, kinds of suspenseful kinds of stories and the roller coaster rides and the more. I love the highs and the lows. So there are a few that particularly really inspired that love in books for me. Particularly, I mean, I guess the very first would be like Scott Westerfield with like the Ugly series. That was something that was among the first things that was really exciting to me in terms of uh, sort of unique ideas and also having some of the suspense incorporated in there a little bit. And then later on, I came across, of course, Stephanie Meyer and Veronica Roth, and their kinds of extremely exciting and engaging stories with plenty of ups and downs, lots of highs and lows there, of course. Of course, there's things like the Twilight series or one of my absolute favorites, The Host, um, where there's just so much suspense involved in there. And for me, when there's some sort of massive size obstacle that some very strong headed, strong hearted, lovable characters are standing up to with all the resilience in the world, pretty much any well written story with that, and I'm just like a goner. I absolutely love it. Um, so those are some authors that particularly absolutely gripped my heart so much so that I absolutely fell in love with the story. It's so engaging, for it really draws me in so much. Um, Especially something like The Host by Stephanie Meyer or Tahira Mafi and um, her series that she has with the Shatter Me series. They're just so it speaks to so much strength and so much excitement. That it's those are the kinds of things that I love when I'm reading, and when I'm writing, I very much have a similar preference as far as stories go, where I do want those really exciting moments throughout the story and the stuff that really draws you in and those kinds of things. And that's the kind of stuff, therefore, from all of those kinds of books that I love so much. Those are things that I also include throughout my books as well as I write.
If you describe your favorite author's writing style.
I would so definitely would be along the lines of the dystopian genre. Like to what I was talking about in terms of those highs and lows and the massive sized obstacles, just along those lines for me is very much the dystopian genre. I absolutely love that. Um, and aside from that, in terms of their writing style, I would have to definitely say just some sort of unique concepts behind them several times, like what I was talking about with the Ugly series, where there's just a number of very interesting ideas behind there in terms of the utopia and the just the different kinds of ideas on how to, be fit and all these different kinds of things. Like it's been a number of years since I've read that particular series, but I do remember that there are some very interesting concepts behind like staying fit and just being happy and things like that. Um, Unique writing to me is very interesting, of course, because there's nothing else that's really like it. So those are things that particularly draw me in. Um, and then, like I was talking about with Veronica Roth or Tara Mafi, their writing style is very much how I would personally describe as being very, I would say, hardcore, just in terms of, the characters where they are, going through all these different, very difficult experiences. You do see where they're human, um, but you see that there's so much strength there, and it's very exciting seeing them come up against the obstacles that they face.
Very well said, Miss DJan. Before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening. According to my ranking tops in the last 30 days, in Nepal, I got on the top 27. Nepal, thank you so much. Egypt at 31, Pakistan at 56, Zambia at 70. Cameroon at 81, United Republic of Tanzania at 31, South Africa at 144, Mongolia at 166, Hong Kong at 175, Libya at 184, Algeria at 187, India at 213, Turkey at 215, and Jordan at 236. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world. So let's talk about the Blizzard Secrets. What behind the title of your novel?
Generally speaking, when it comes to writing, to creating the title, it's after I've already finished writing, or at least when I'm very close to being done writing. Because when I'm writing, I'm just so in the zone of just writing and being very fully immersed in the story. Like when I'm writing, I not just writing like from the exterior necessarily. Like I actually like put myself actually in the realm of it, and I'm engaging with the characters. I'm seeing the world around me and all of that. So I'm just my focus is primarily on just the writing. And then when I'm pretty much done or completely done, then I realize, okay, well, now I need to kind of come up with a title for this book and not just call it new book or new file, because usually I have when I'm like saving it on a file, I just have new or a new book or something like that. After a while, you kind of realize you need to call it something actually official. So when I started really considering what I was going to name it, and by this time, I've already been very immersed in the story. I've been interacting with all of the different elements in it, and I pretty much know the story, completely, fully through and through at this point since I finished it. And so I really wanted something that would speak well, of course, to what the story is and what, and be able to set expectations properly and speak to what the experience is in reading the story. And considering the different elements of the book, I was playing around with different words, and the Blizzard Secrets just kind of came up to me. And I'm like, that actually seems to really be perfectly fitting because it speaks to the very experience of the book. One of the major key elements in there is how um, how imaginable the setting is when it comes down to this basically frozen wasteland that's in there. Um, and a key aspect to the storyline is the mystery involved in it. So the Blizzard Secrets just very much relates to those aspects of the book, and it fits so splendidly. So I figured that I would just go ahead and use that title.
So the Blizzard Secrets, you republish it because it says in Amazon you published last March 30, 2020.
Indeed. I actually ended up republishing it because well, actually, for a couple of reasons. So, for one, when I initially published it, honestly, I published it really because I wrote it and I enjoyed it so much. I did want to share it with people, but I wasn't really pushing for it very much to really spread it to anyone. It was just kind of, I wrote this and maybe some people like it, so I just kind of placed it out there. But whereas now, after getting, hearing from people who have read it and, seeing how there are a number of people who actually really do just enjoy it, I really do want to actually put it forth and really do my part to share it with other people so that, of course, so people will actually know about it. So that's one reason behind republishing it. Another reason, so I'm actually doing a number of things differently this go around in how I am spreading the word about it. Another reason is because, and I did make a couple of revisions throughout the story as well that people really do enjoy and like in the story. Another particular reason is because the cover I did not feel at all represented the story much at all. So I went through getting that redesign and am much happier with the cover now. It actually does very much speak to the Blizzard secrets and all that it does entail, all of the suspense and all of the mystery involved in it. So that's also another reason why I am republishing it now.
The Blizzard Secrets, how did you crafted it?
Started because I saw an image on Pinterest. So the way that I go about creating stories is honestly I pull inspiration from a number of different places, and it really just it varies. In this particular instance, I was just looking on Pinterest and I came across this image that really just kind of jumped out at me. It was a sort of very whimsical image of this gorgeous looking white castle that was on this mountain, and it had this just beautiful shrubbery just everywhere coming in between the towers and everything, and it just looked so mystical and just screamed fantasy, honestly. It had like a waterfall coming out nearby and stuff. It was just, it was beautiful. And it just really made me want to create something, create something beautiful too. So, and I wanted to write something. So I sat down at a computer, believe it or not, just with an image that was similar to that in my mind. And I just started writing. And as I wrote, the story kind of came out like word vomit. And, when it comes down to writing, several times as you're doing it, it's just, that's basically exactly what it is. It's kind of just like word vomit. And it's just like, oh, so much, so many ideas that are coming, and you just pour it all out, and then you'll go back and you'll revise it later. But so as I was writing, the different elements were coming to me, and I put it all together. With everything that I write, I always do want it to be to hold some sort of extra meaningful aspect to it, or aspects to it, multiple. Because everything that I do want it to be beneficial to people. I do want to create art, create books. I kind of refer to them as artwork because to me, when you're creating something out of nothing, it feels like artwork a lot of times. But I do want to create something that other people will enjoy and, be really engaged with. But I also want it to be something that will be beneficial for them, even like, say, in the future, something that's deeper than just, oh, that was a fun story. I do want it to be something that provides a really special experience for people. So with everything that I write, there's typically something like that in there. In the case of the Blizzard Secrets, there are a couple of different themes that are like that. Like, for example, when faced with what seems like an impossible circumstance, and it's a brand new phase in your life of some sort, and you may feel a sense of self doubt in the face of that new phase because it's so different and because it's so grand. And even more concerning, you may have other people who have come before you who have such seemingly intimidating greatness, and how they tackled it. And so that can tend to make a person feel considerably small. But in the book, I mean, because we're all human, imposter syndrome is something that people do experience, or we do experience from time to time. And in the book, while that is a reality, it also speaks to essentially the opportunity to overcome that, and to tap into one's own potential and be the best you that you can be, rather than trying to be like anybody else, because nobody else can be you. Only you can be you, and no one else can tackle a situation like you can. So it just speaks to different kinds of meaningful concepts and themes like that. So that ended up being incorporated in there as well, because those are uh, very key concepts that I very much believe in.
Very well said, Miss DJan. So, is there a sequel or a series or trilogy of this novel?
So I will say that as people want it, then there is definitely a very high possibility that there will be.
Cross my finger. There will be a prequel, there will be a series, or become a trilogy. All right. So let's talk about the main character of the Blizzard Secrets. What can you say about it?
Oh goodness. Okay. So her name is Daya, and I really really love this character so much. She is basically like every aspect of like the best version of ourselves that one could be, I would say. Um, I say that because, like for me personally, and I'm sure that, there are many cases that one hears about with this, where when an author writes a character, several times there are aspects of themselves that go into that character. While that is applicable for me, I would not at all say that I am exactly like that, but there are some aspects of myself that are in that character. But she has those aspects to like the nth degree. You know, she has those things amplified. And then she has additional virtuous aspects to her that I would like to have. So even though I wrote her, I created her in the story, honestly, I find her inspirational even for myself because she is so um, she's extremely diligent. She's so responsible. She's very dutiful. She prioritizes others relentlessly. She doesn't let any sort of complications or hindrances really hardly face her at all, honestly. She has human moments, of course, because human and difficult situations take place, and they can be some hard times. But she is extremely resilient in a way that's extremely inspirational and encouraging, I feel. Um, so she's also someone who I feel is extremely relatable, and also readers have told me that they feel that she's extremely relatable just because of the things that she deals with and the choices that she has to make, and the difficulties that are involved in those choices. Because when you have difficult obstacles in front of you, that's why they're obstacles, because it's not easy. So she struggles with it, but she in the end she tends to make some very hard decisions and hard calls, looking out for those that she cares about and prioritizing those people in a very beautiful way, I personally feel. um, so those are some things that I absolutely love very much about her, um, just because of those strong aspects that she does carry throughout the whole entire story, honestly.
Interesting, Miss DJan. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, on our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurant in downtown Toronto. Plus one more, please do grab a copy of our books, Food 101, Volume 1, Basics, Volume 2, Fundamentals, Volume 3, Essentials, Volume 4, Greek Cuisine, Volume 5, Japanese Cuisine, Volume 6, Spanish Cuisine, and Volume 7, Indian Cuisine. And more volumes to come, people, because this is my 100 episodes of my first season. And Chef Alessandro will come on the volume 12 because Chef Alessandro came up to my podcast on the second week of my no second half of my second season. So please do watch of those volumes because those are techniques or fundamental essential that you need to create a delicious food. What is the best highlight of the Blizzard Secrets?
Best highlight, I would have to say uh, a particular surprise plot twist that does take place in the book. I don't want to speak too much to it, of course, because I don't want to give too much away. But like I mentioned, I love those kinds of surprises and highs and lows in stories. And at this particular part, uh, Daya has to make a decision in the face of very surprising circumstances, very disappointing circumstances. And she has to figure out how she's going to handle it, what to do with it. Um, and like I was talking about earlier, in terms of her character and her prioritizing others, she makes a very difficult decision that I personally do stand wholeheartedly behind her with, but it's a decision that others are even surprised that she makes, because it's so monumental and quite frankly, it ends up taking such a stand. Um, so I would say that that is one of the biggest highlights, because we all, like I mentioned, we all do face difficult obstacles, and sometimes I know for myself, I don't always make the best decision. I want to, but sometimes we don't always do that. But it's inspirational to see someone weigh the different options and choose the right option, the right path, that does prioritize the loved ones and prioritize those who need it, and takes a stand for those who may not necessarily be able to do so themselves. So I would say that that's a major highlight in there.
The Blizzard Secrets, if you want to go back and revise the book itself, which part of the book you want to revise?
I can't really say there's a particular part that I would necessarily want to revise, but I would say that if I were to make any changes, I would possibly add more to the Blizzard Secrets to this particular book, because something that I've heard from readers, and that I completely do get, is that several people want more. They want to see more in terms of interacting with different characters. Like, they want to see those characters more. They want to get more experiences with them, or see more aspects of the community, caliber, and all of that, because they're enjoying it so much. So I definitely do understand where they're coming from with that, because I really do enjoy. I did enjoy, and I still do enjoy going through going through the story, and seeing those interactions and everything. And absolutely, like I mentioned, I absolutely love Daya, and I also love other characters in there, and just the whole community of Taliver. That's the name of the community in the story, is Taliver. Um, so if anything, I would say likely that. But I also do, to that effect, I do actually have a sort of special edition newsletter, actually, that does go into a little bit. It actually has bonus features and bonus content in there, things like that, that dive even deeper into the story, kind of like for lack of a better way of saying, kind of like an after party of the story, character interviews and things like that, that are essentially bonus features to the Blizzard Secrets.
I want to shout out to the people listening in the United States, in the state of Texas. Well, in Dallas, I get 30% audience share. Houston, I think it's the capital, right? Houston, Texas.
Yes, indeed.
Houston is 12%, San Antonio at 8%, Austin at 5%, Texas City at 5%, McAllen at 2%, Arlington at 2%, Ducanville at 2%, Irving, did I pronounce correct? Irving or Irving? 1%, Cedar Park, Grand Prairie, Worth, Mesquite, Willis, Whitney, Lubbock, Euless, El Paso, San Marcos, Midland, Amarillo, Richardson, Abilene, Dayton, Levinsville. I have a lot of places in Texas. Thank you so much, Texas, for supporting this podcast. As I said, this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thank you, Listen Notes, for giving me my listen score of 24 and 10% popular show globally. Thank you so much. And please do continue support this podcast, because as I said, I created this podcast for all the writers out there. What is the big difference of writing a poem and writing a novel?
For one, with poetry, there's more of a structured setting. It depends on what kind of poem you're writing, of course. I mean, whether you're doing haiku, or, just either, there are different types. Usually, when I'm writing a poetry, though, these days, it's more of a free setup, as opposed to like haiku kinds of structures, even though those were among the kinds of assignments when I was younger in school that I would be doing there. But so that's a major difference for sure. Also, as far as my experience goes in terms of the difference, um, with a poem, since it's considerably shorter and less being written, uh, one, I write them much faster than a full-on book. Um, but also, as far as having inspiration behind it, I get inspiration for writing poetry from a greater variety of things than necessarily when it comes down to writing a book. Because again, writing a poem is a much shorter project than writing a full book. So as far as like when I'm starting a new book, that's more of a far and in between scenario than when I'm writing poetry. So, I get some sort of inspiration, whether it's from a dream or whether it's um, from an image or whatever it may be for a book on occasion, and then, I'll start my next project. But if in the case of poetry, it may be today I get inspiration from looking at a tree, and then later on in the same day I get inspiration from looking at a waterfall, and then the next day, the very next day, I get inspiration from listening to some musician play an instrument, and so it's since it's such a shorter project, it allows for more opportunities and more often to be inspired by a whole variety of different things for me anyway, um, more so than necessarily when it comes down to writing a book.
Yes. So, are you independent or traditional publishing?
I am independent.
So, what are the pros and cons of being indie author?
Okay, so, and I'm sure you've heard this quite a few times. So when it comes down to self-publishing, of course, there is the, I'll say slight downside as far as essentially forking everything out yourself in terms of paying for the promotions and the marketing and all of that. But there are such substantial advantages behind self-publishing, where you have your own hands in absolutely everything. You're behind the cover that's created. You're completely involved in the editing process and whatnot. Of course, you have other people who are doing editing, who you bring in for doing the editing, but you're still very involved in the process. Um, the entirety of the story in all of its contents is completely your own. It's just a number of things that you are completely involved in. So it's 110% yours. Um, and I feel like it lends itself all the more to feeling like your baby, because it's so completely yours. Um, Rather than necessarily the trade-off to a certain degree of having to or possibly having to change things based on what's suggested to you and things like that when it comes down to traditionally published. So those are some of the major things that I absolutely love about being self-published.
Very well said.
So actually, I am offering it today. So to all of the listeners out there, you can go onto my website, which is DJanCreations.com. That's D as in David, JAN, E for Echo, creations.com. And you're going to see an image there. It's going to say Book 101 Review, Podcast Listeners. You can just click on there and it's going to have some instructions. You can enter a giveaway by following those instructions, and I will send you the winners. I will send a book actually for free. So I actually wanted to extend that to everyone, and I highly recommend, jumping on that as soon as possible because I would actually be announcing the winners on Wednesday, with email and on my social media account. So just wanted to to lay that out there for everybody.
Miss Dejani, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. Please do. You can go onto my website, like I mentioned, DJanCreations.com, and enter that giveaway that I mentioned. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle is, again, DJan Creations, pretty consistent. You can find me on there. I also do have that newsletter that I was talking about, which is one of the steps for the giveaway. In that newsletter, there are several gifts and surprises that are available for absolutely everybody. It's not just a giveaway, there are actual gifts on there for absolutely everybody who joins the newsletter. So you can find details about the newsletter on my website and on my Instagram as well.
What is your inspiring message for those aspiring writers out there that they want to publish their novel?
Yeah, so I would definitely say learn as much as you can. There's a lot of information out there when it comes down to publishing your books. So gather as much knowledge as you possibly can. And I would also say if you feel that you want to kind of go it alone in the process, definitely don't, reach out to, there are plenty of professionals out there who have really great, valuable perspectives. I would suggest reaching out to those individuals and, including them in the process as you're preparing to publish your book, such as great editors, great cover designers, all of the works. Um, they really do help with enriching and enhancing your story if you find the right um, personnel who understand your vision for your book. So I would definitely recommend doing that. It's wonderful working together in a team of people who support you and believe in you and in your vision. So I would definitely say also go for it. Definitely go for it.
Yes, go for it, people. Probably you are one of the best in the making. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on here, Daniel.
Moricon people, see you soon.